The secret betrayal. The night Zidane almost joined Barcelona. June 23rd, 2000. Hotel Arts, Barcelona. Room 1247. The most secretive meeting in football history was about to begin. Joan Gaspart, Barcelona's vice president, sat across from Zinedine Zidane, the man Real Madrid believed they had already signed. Between them lay a contract that would have rewritten El Clásico forever and transformed the most famous rivalry in sports. For 3 hours, the greatest player of his generation was 99% convinced to commit the ultimate betrayal. For 3 hours, Barcelona came closer than anyone imagined to stealing the crown jewel of the Galactico project. This is the untold story of how close football came to its most shocking double cross, and the single phone call that changed everything in the final hour. The meeting had been orchestrated with the precision of a military operation. Joan Gaspart, Barcelona's master negotiator, had spent weeks planning every detail. The location: Barcelona's most exclusive hotel, away from prying eyes. The timing: the night before Real Madrid's planned announcement. The goal: convince Zidane that his destiny lay at Camp Nou, not the Santiago Bernabeu. But this wasn't just about money. This was about something far more dangerous. Barcelona had done their psychological homework. They knew Zidane's weaknesses, his dreams, his secret doubts about joining Real Madrid, and they were about to exploit every single one. "We weren't just offering him a contract," Gaspart later revealed. "We were offering him a completely different version of himself." What Barcelona understood, and Real Madrid had missed, was that Zidane wasn't entirely comfortable with the Galactico project. The idea of being football's most expensive showpiece, of carrying the pressure of a world record transfer, of being expected to justify €75 million every time he touched the ball, it terrified him. Florentino Perez had sold Zidane on glory, prestige, and astronomical wages. But he had also burdened him with expectations that felt impossible to meet. Every training session would be scrutinized. Every match would be a referendum on his worth. Every mistake would be a €75 million embarrassment. Barcelona sensed this anxiety and prepared to weaponize it. Gaspart opened the meeting with a psychological masterstroke. He didn't talk about money. Instead, he talked about freedom. "At Barcelona, you won't be a Galactico," he told Zidane. "You'll be an artist. You won't be a marketing project. You'll be a footballer. We don't want you to justify a transfer fee. We want you to express your genius." Zidane had spent his entire career being appreciated for his art, not his price tag. The idea of joining a project that valued creativity over commerce was intoxicating. But Gaspart was just getting started. "We have something Real Madrid can never offer you," Gaspart continued, sliding a photograph across the table. It showed a young Brazilian with an impossible smile, juggling a football on a beach in Rio de Janeiro. "Ronaldinho," Gaspart announced. "We're signing him next summer. Imagine the partnership. Your intelligence, his joy. Your experience, his spontaneity. Together, you would create football that people would remember forever." Zidane studied the photograph. He had heard whispers about this Brazilian wonderkid, had seen glimpses of his ridiculous skill. The thought of playing alongside someone with such pure love for the game was magnetic. "Real Madrid will surround you with other expensive signings," Gaspart pressed. "We'll surround you with pure footballers. Which version of yourself would you rather be?" For the next hour, Gaspart painted a picture of Zidane at Barcelona that was impossible to resist. No pressure to be a superstar, just permission to be brilliant. No obligation to sell jerseys, just freedom to create art. No burden of justifying a fee, just the joy of expressing his genius in the cathedral of football. "Imagine your first touch at Camp Nou," Gaspart whispered. 98,000 people rising to their feet, not because you cost a fortune, but because you're about to show them something beautiful. The vision was seductive, because it was everything Zidane actually wanted. Not fame or money, he already had those, but artistic freedom, creative partnership, and the chance to be remembered as a footballer, rather than a financial investment. Zidane was listening. More dangerously, he was believing. But there was one massive obstacle. Zidane had already given his word to Real Madrid. Not a contract, that hadn't been signed yet, but a gentleman's agreement, a promise between men. His integrity was at stake. Gaspard had anticipated this objection. "Zinedine," he said carefully, "has Real Madrid been completely honest with you? Have they told you about the other Galacticos they're planning to sign? Have they explained that you'll be competing for attention with Figo, with Beckham, with whoever comes next?" The seeds of doubt began to sprout. Zidane had assumed he would be Real Madrid's centerpiece, their undisputed star. But Gaspard was suggesting something different, that he would be just one expensive toy among many. "At Barcelona, you would be the sun," Gaspard continued. "At Real Madrid, you'll be one star among many." Gaspard's masterstroke came when he addressed Zidane's family situation. His wife, Veronique, was hesitant about the move to Madrid, worried about the pressure, the expectations, the media circus that would surround the world's most expensive player. "Your family will have peace in Barcelona," Gaspard promised. "We protect our players' privacy. We understand that football is your profession, not your entire life." Can Real Madrid promise the same? The question hung in the air like a guided missile. Zidane knew that Real Madrid's Galactico project was as much about celebrity as football. His family would indeed become public property, their privacy sacrificed on the altar of sporting spectacle. By hour 2 of the meeting, something unprecedented was happening. Zinedine Zidane was actually considering betraying Real Madrid for Barcelona. Not considering casually, considering seriously. The artistic freedom, the partnership with Ronaldinho, the family considerations, the escape from Galactico pressure. It all made sense. Barcelona wasn't just offering him a job, they were offering him a different life. "I need time to think," Zidane finally said, the first words he had spoken in 30 minutes. "Of course," Gaspard replied, sliding the contract across the table. "But not too much time. Real Madrid announces you tomorrow. After that, this opportunity disappears forever." Zidane looked at the contract. €65 million transfer fee, €12 million annual salary, and complete creative freedom. Not quite as much money as Real Madrid, but infinitely more appealing as a football proposition. He was 99% convinced to sign. Zidane left Hotel Arts at 2:17 a.m. with Barcelona's contract in his briefcase, and Real Madrid's expectations weighing on his conscience. He had promised Florentino Perez an answer by morning. He had given his word to a man who had pursued him for 3 years. But Barcelona's vision was haunting him. Artistic freedom, creative partnership, family peace, everything he actually wanted from football. He spent the night walking through Barcelona's empty streets, carrying the contract that could change everything. Past Camp Nou, where he tried to imagine himself in Barcelona colours. Through the Gothic Quarter, where he wondered if his children could grow up without paparazzi. Along the beach, where he questioned everything he thought he knew about his own ambitions. By sunrise, he still hadn't decided. July 3rd, 2000. 11:47 p.m. Zidane sat in his hotel room, Barcelona's contract open on the desk, his phone in his hand. He had decided to call Joan Gaspard and accept Barcelona's offer. His finger was hovering over the speed dial button when the phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer. "Zinedine?" The voice was elderly, heavily accented, unmistakably emotional. "This is Alfredo Di Stefano, the greatest Real Madrid legend of all time, was calling personally to convince Zidane not to betray the club's destiny." "I heard there might be doubts," Di Stefano continued. "I'm calling to tell you that some decisions define not just careers, but legacies. Real Madrid needs you. But more than that, you need Real Madrid." What followed was a 15-minute conversation that changed football history. Di Stefano didn't talk about money or fame or Galactico projects. Instead, he talked about something deeper: destiny. Great players find great clubs, the Argentine legend explained. But the greatest players create legacies that last forever. At Barcelona, you will be very good. At Real Madrid, you will be eternal. Di Stefano understood what Gaspart had missed. Zidane wasn't motivated by comfort or artistic freedom. He was motivated by the possibility of transcending football itself, of becoming something larger than sport. "The Bernabeu is waiting for you," Di Stefano whispered. "Not because you're expensive, but because you're inevitable." After Di Stefano hung up, Zidane sat in silence for exactly 7 minutes. Barcelona's contract was still open on the desk. Gaspart's number was still programmed in his phone. The betrayal was still just one phone call away. But something fundamental had shifted. Di Stefano had reminded him of something he had forgotten. He wasn't just choosing between clubs. He was choosing between versions of himself. The Barcelona version would be comfortable, creative, and content. The Real Madrid version would be pressured, scrutinized, and challenged. But only one version had the possibility of greatness that transcended football itself. At 11:54 p.m., Zidane picked up Barcelona's contract and tore it in half. At 11:55 p.m., he called Florentino Perez and confirmed his commitment to Real Madrid. At 11:56 p.m., he called Joan Gaspart and apologized for a betrayal that would never happen. Years later, football fans would speculate endlessly about the alternative universe where Zidane chose Barcelona. Would he have been happier? More creative? Less pressured? Would Barcelona have dominated the early 2000s instead of Real Madrid? The questions are fascinating, but ultimately irrelevant. Zidane didn't choose comfort over challenge, artistic freedom over legendary pressure. He chose the harder path because he understood something that Barcelona had missed. Greatness isn't comfortable. Zidane's success at Real Madrid, the Champions League victory, the volley in the final, the legendary performances, vindicated his decision to resist Barcelona's seduction. He became not just a great player, but a Real Madrid legend, an El Clasico icon, a footballer whose legacy transcended club loyalty. But the alternative haunts football imagination. What if the greatest player of his generation had chosen differently? What if the ultimate betrayal had actually happened? The ultimate irony of Zidane's near move to Barcelona came years later when he returned to Real Madrid as a coach. His understanding of Barcelona's psychology, gained during those 3 hours at Hotel Arts, became crucial in his tactical battles against them. "I knew how they thought, because I almost thought like them. Understanding their seduction helped me resist their football." For years, the details of Zidane's meeting with Barcelona remained football's best-kept secret. Neither club wanted to admit how close they had come to the ultimate transfer coup. Zidane himself rarely discussed it, understanding that some stories are too dangerous to tell while careers are still active. Only decades later, with legacy secure and rivalries softened by time, did the full truth emerge. Football had come within hours of its most shocking betrayal, and only a phone call from a legend had preserved the natural order of the universe. Today, when El Clasico unfolds at Camp Nou or the Bernabeu, when Barcelona and Real Madrid clash in the sport's greatest rivalry, there's an invisible presence on the pitch, the ghost of what might have been. Somewhere in an alternative universe, Zinedine Zidane wears Barcelona blue and red. He creates magic alongside Ronaldinho. He experiences artistic freedom without financial pressure. He becomes the greatest player never to grace El Clasico's most famous stage. But in this universe, the one we inhabit, Zidane chose differently. He chose pressure over peace, legend over comfort, Real Madrid over Barcelona. And in doing so, he didn't just secure his own legacy. He preserved the natural order of football's greatest rivalry, ensuring that some betrayals remained forever in the realm of imagination rather than reality. The secret meeting in room 1247 lasted 3 hours, but its consequences, and the phone call that prevented them, will echo through football history forever. Sometimes the most important victories are the betrayals that never happen.